Thank you, Alexis, for the introduction. I'd like to welcome on stage, please, in no particular order except for alphabetical, Mr. Teddy Zhang. So Teddy Zhang is the chairman of Thayer based in Shanghai and also the board director of Xinjiang. Next, we have the managing director of FICO Corporation, Mr. Sanjay Singh. Next, we have Mr. Pierre Rollot, CEO of Louvre Hotels based in Paris and also European president of Xinjiang. And following that, we have Rock Huang from Hong Kong CTS based in Beijing, China Travel Service Group. Alexis gave us some highlights on the number of transactions which have occurred in the European hotels market, of which only a minority sold to the Asian groups. But the velocity and penetration into the market since the previous cycle has been at a much faster rate than any other regional capital source. So with this in mind, I'm grateful to have the panelists join us from the various places in the Far East that they've come from specifically for this event today. And it's a Q&A session, which I'll allow some 10-15 minutes at the end for the audience to ask if there's anything that we haven't covered in the earlier part of our session today. So this one is for you, Sanjay. Congratulations on your acquisition of the Jupiter portfolio, which consisted of the 26 Mercure hotels in regional UK. This was a joint venture with Singer Estates. My question to you is, would you partner again? Not necessarily with the same partner. And for your next deal, what is it that you're looking for?
The joint venture that we formed with Singer was initially specifically was for the purpose of acquisition of Jupiter portfolio. But as we grew this relationship during the course of this transaction, we realized that both us and our partner have similar vision about the market. Whether it's UK or the continent. And although we don't have a joint venture sort of specifically covers the whole region, but by and large, it is our desire and it's our partner's desire to work together in the markets that we are together. So, for instance, in UK, we will continue to work together. In other markets, like in Germany, we have Grand City as our operating partner. And our partners, Singers, may not have desire to be in this market. So, to answer your question, we would love to work with them, but we are open to working with other partners in this part of the world. It's all is a function of what kind of relationships are brought in by the local partners here in Europe. But if it's from Asia, then I suspect it's largely going to be with the same group.
Okay. So on that note, for all the agents presenting options out there, is it safe to assume that whatever we show you, you will automatically show Singer as well? Or should we still continue to show you groups separately?
No, Lapika is here. We have this understanding and relationship that whatever comes to us or whatever comes to them, we both share. And if there's something that we believe we really want to pursue and they think that they don't want to do it, then we would go on our own. But ultimately, it's the management platform in UK, which is Jupiter platform, is going to manage those assets. So, for instance, if we buy hotels in UK and our partner is not interested in co-investing, but the management platform will manage it. So the benefit will still be derived by the company.
Okay, thank you. Teddy, this one's for you. So you played a critical role as the man who executed the Xinjiang and Louvre deal on behalf of Xinjiang. Can you please share with us your experience and how it was critical for the stars to align so that the foreign exchange, the lending rates, the offer table, and your relationship with Barry and Starwood made it possible for that deal to happen And on that note, could you share with us your specific challenges helping an SOE vis-a-vis a private sector investor do such a large-scale transaction?
Oh, that's a good question. A lot of questions there. First, there's a strong will for Chinese companies in this space going overseas to the other market, particularly for Xinjiang, which is the largest one in China. So we had a transaction with Xinjiang on a 50-50 basis back in 2010 for the Interstate Hotel acquisition, the group in US. That was the first time corporate China privatized a NYC listco. So based upon that relationship and the trust we have built over the time, and we saw the opportunity in the European market. So that's how we started with Starwood Capital. But actually, two companies back in 2013, 2 years ago before the acquisition, already started a marketing relationship with Pierre and the team. So the team from both sides, they knew each other quite well. So when the time we felt was right, and we very decisively talked to the Starwood Capital. We didn't join the auction process, which Starwood put up with Goldman and Deutsche Bank. So we sort of cut in the second round of the bidding process, and we made a deal in 5 days, signed the SPA.
When you told me that story, I was like shocked beyond belief that a deal
right.
of
This
1.3
is
billion
very
euros was done in 5
rare
days.
for a SOE, state-owned enterprise in China. One of the things when you deal with Chinese company, private or public, is the closing risk. There's a lot of will to invest outside, but the execution, closing of the deal, still there's plenty of a risk. Regulatory, foreign exchange, policy approval. So we were able to sign the SPA back in 2013, November. So by the time we closed the deal in February of last year, so the euro dropped about 18%. So we locked in the US price, right? So that's basically the idea of, we don't dwell on, few 10 millions, since Xinjiang is a strategic buyer. So the other advantage we took, as your question asked about the lending rates, so that was a 1.3 billion euro deal. So basically 50% of the cash we put in the Chinese bank, we got about 4.67 interest rate. At the same time, so they landed us 100% entire size of the deal at the LIBOR plus, I don't know, that was 180 basis points. So it's 2.7%. So basically, we got an arbitrage in the interest rate. We didn't pay out a lot of cash upfront. So then you see the market, RMB, Chinese currency depreciate. So we got a stable European euro-dominated revenue, right? So sort of a hedge out. So in retrospect, you look at this, in hindsight, it's perfect timing. Everything on the exchange rate, on the interest rate. So it was a good transaction. It's been a year, and we have had a good relationship with management team, and the management team is very stable. We got a peer here. So that's, but the challenge is, again, you have to sort of KYC, know your client, i.e. both sides, the seller, the buyer, particularly in China, buyer, you have to understand their decision process, right? Sometimes you think maybe the top leader makes the decision, but actually it's not. There is a collective group decision, and even beyond the company level. So that's a difference, when you deal with a private company versus a SOE. But on a lot of policy regulatory approval process, that's very similar. Regardless you're a private company or you're SOE companies.
Yeah, thank you. That is also, I guess, a quite different way of decision making from your end, because Sanjay, you of all the panelists today are not SOE. So could you share with us your experiences in the decision making process, which you touched on, which I find very interesting whenever I deal with Asian buyer groups. It's not the steering committee, it's not just the IC, it's a whole bunch of influences that get thrown through the mix.
I think in our case, it was straightforward. When this particular transaction was brought to us, we were actually looking at something else in UK, and I remember going to your office and meeting Rob, who just dropped by literally at the last minute when we presented this transaction. I was with my principal, so I said that, well, this makes sense, and why don't we pursue this? So the decision was made literally like in 30 minutes, after going through the principal numbers. We met with the seller group, and I think in less than 24 hours time,
that was the next day.
Yeah, we made the decision, and we decided to proceed. Of course, there's follow-up requirements on looking into the entire due diligence, working with our JV partners. We had a bit of a hiccup there as well, but all in all, see, sometimes the decision making is very quick. You realize that it's a transaction which makes a lot of sense as fundamentals are clear, especially when the seller group. I mean, I agree with Terry that know your client, know your customers. It's very important. So who's selling? And the seller group has a credibility. So they're not going to put something which is not going to stack up at the end. But you have to go through the whole process, and which is what takes a little bit longer. Sometimes takes 45, 60 days to get this done. But in the end, everything sort of falls into the slot. So the decision making is very quick from the private enterprises, but for a public companies which are joint venture partners, they have to go through the whole process, which requires the shareholders' approvals and board of directors and investment committee. And so sometimes it works in a manner that we proceed with the transaction. We said, okay, this is what we want to do. Let's get in, sign the exclusivity, get into the deal, and the partner sort of goes through the process of approvals, and at the end we meet together and proceed. That's how it works, at least in our case.
And also in your case, if you're looking to partner as well, and especially with like a listed entity, I guess it's that risk of closure that is higher if it's needs to go through the different approval processes. So you have in the past potentially partnered with other people, but decided to go with the best fit that can execute quickly, because you don't want yourself to be at a disadvantage when it comes to security of closure.
Yeah, that's right. So again, the debt plays an important role. You have to be there in terms of availability of resources to close a transaction, and we were very fortunate that our Thai banks were there behind us all along, both for the German transaction that we closed in 2014 and the last year for this particular transaction. I think the most important part of this whole process is the credibility of your financial supporters, and as long as it's there, it'll happen.
Okay, good, thank you. Pia, I have a question for you. So the dust has settled on the acquisition. Can you share with us how things have changed under new Chinese ownership, and what the plan is moving forward for your Luva Group in Xinjiang?
Yeah, of course. After 1 year, after the acquisition by Xinjiang, I could say the life has changed completely, because now we are in very positive trend on many things. And I will sum up in 4 points. First point on brand, development in China, Chinese travelers, and development in Europe. At the beginning, what is very good with a strategic player like Xinjiang, that they believe in the brand. And brand is not only awareness, it's the brand concept. That's why the chairman, the chairman of the group, knows very well Golden Tulip in the past, and wanted to take Golden Tulip as a mega brand for the world on the 4-star market. And also he discovered another brand, Campanile. Campanile is very famous because it's a restaurant and the hotel. And he was, I think he fell in love in this concept. And he wanted to have these two brands out of 4 in different segments to be a worldwide brand on the segment. Golden Tulip for the 4-star and Company for the 3-star. And he put a lot of resources behind to help me to reinvent the brand. And we defined quite a new concept. And that's very good because we work very hard and we invest very hard on the beginning of the new acquisition. And that's why he wanted also to, second point, to develop this brand in China. China market is very tough. We worked very hard in the past to tackle this market with no success. But with Xinjiang, all the doors become open. And the Chairman Yu decided to develop these two brands, Campanile and Golden Tulip, in China. We started the first flagship company in the band will open in June this year, and Golden Tulip Rainbow Hotel, one of the most flagship hotel in Shanghai, more than 650 rooms, will be reopened after the renovation, beginning of January. That's why the plan is to develop this brand in China and to have 200 Golden Tulip and 500 Campanile. Why is so smart? It's smart because, for the third point, for the Chinese travelers after. Because if your brand are high awareness, of course, the Chinese traveler in the future will choose our brand. And you know that Xinjiang is not only a hospitality group, but also in digital, in tour operator and transportation. That the third point, that with Xinjiang, we capture the Chinese travelers in our hotel in Europe. And it creates a real competitive edge compared to the other brand, because we have this flow of Chinese travelers in our hotel. And also with Xinjiang, what my life has changed is they give me the power to do development in Europe. We presented some project to, of course, Teddy and Chairman Yu, and they push us and say, continue to develop on your own, and propose a lot of projects. And it was very quick because, for example, we bought some properties in Poland last year. 2 months ago, we closed 25 hotels in Germany, and all the things are going in this way. And moreover, I asked to Chairman Yu and Teddy, I have other projects in the future, and they say, okay, what do you need? And the answer is they ask their partner, the bank ICBC. And the bank ICBC give me a credit line of 2.5 billion euro to spend in the next 3 years at Louvre hotel level. That they trust the company, they give the financing, the support. It's very, you speak about the process, but sometimes the process is a little bit different to work with the SOE. But be sure that when the SOE has the financing, the will to invest, the will to develop the company to be one of the top leaders in the world, and believe in the people, you know, lives change.
So you have 2.5 billion credit from ICBC to spend in the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Who's got product to sell?
And not only, what is important also is Xinjiang is not only on the hotel business. They have restaurant, transportation, digital, tour operator, many things like that. That's why in Europe we are interested in a wide scope compared to before. It's not only hotel, but it could be hostel, could be senior residence, could be clinic, digital. The scope is quite wide.
So post-acquisition, have you seen a noticeable change in the number of Chinese tourists occupying the beds in your hotel room compared to the pre-Chinese ownership days?
Yeah, you know that the Chinese travelers is a key issue for hotel in Europe, because every year it's an increase, depending on the country, of 1/3 every year. That's unbelievable. And they have started with a group, and now they're more individual and more corporate, and they spend more and more in the hotel, and they are looking with better and better product, upgrade product, and not only in capital, only in touristic spot, but everywhere now in Europe. That's why it, in some hotel it could represent more than 20% of the turnover. That's huge. And with Xinjiang tour operator send a lot of Chinese travelers outside China. And then we are now the favorite destination of course, for Xinjiang tour operator. Then they recommend our hotel, and of course, the increase of the turnover is huge.
Thank you. That's a nice segue into you, Rock, because...
For the moment, it's green light everywhere.
Okay, we like green lights. And that's a nice segue into Rock. So Rock is with China Travel Services, which is a state-owned enterprise based in Beijing. And last year, they purchased the Q Green portfolio for about £450 million. It was one of the largest transactions in the UK, and your first one in Europe as well. Can you share with us some of the lessons that you went through yourself before you bought this portfolio? What are the deals that you look at? Why didn't it quite work? And what would be some free bits of tips that you would give another Far East Asian investor coming into the European market for the first time?
Right. Hong Kong CTS, we acquired the Q Green hotels last year in August. It was our second try. We started with another portfolio at the beginning of the year. If I can share our experience in the acquisition of last year and the reason why we were failure in the first round of first bid. Hong Kong CTS is an SOE. Actually, we are the largest tourism group in China. We have some 600 travel agencies throughout China, Hong Kong, and Macau. We have very diversified business. In hotels, we own and manage some 85 properties in China, mainland, Hong Kong, and Macau. And we own also the third largest OTA in China, Mango City. We have a public listed company that focuses on freight and logistics and is listed in Shanghai. We have also an investment company listed in Hong Kong stock market. Last year in July, we had our own bank. It's called CTS Bank, which we purchased 2 years ago in 2014. We are very well known in that part of the world, in China, Hong Kong, and Macau. But in the investment market in Europe, we were not known before Q Green acquisition. And not only that, we also didn't quite understand the rules of the game in the continent and the UK. We thought we were sincere. We thought that we wanted to expand into Europe. We try to introduce ourselves to the market. I think it takes time. And also, to make yourself known by the European investors or the customers, that takes also a process. There were questions raising up. Is the decision-making process going to be long because you're an SOE? How do you prove that the deal can be closed within the required period of time? So at the first target we were working on at the beginning of last year, though we went through a few processes, we were at the last round of bid, but eventually we were not accepted. So I think we then learned from that. We appointed professional advisors. We've engaged with international companies, have their names in the UK. We've worked with DTZ at that time. We have also advisors from Christian Co, who are also known in the industry. Of course, we employed lawyers, KWM. We've worked with EY to try to help us or guide us of the process. Then, of course, we also act very fast. We set up our companies in the UK. We opened up our bank account, which we didn't know for the first time. And they say, oh, you have money, how to prove to us? And of course, when we engaged into the second acquisition of Qgrain, the process can just happen very quick. When we made the decision, when we found that it is the deal that we were approaching, we just closed the deal pretty quick.
Yeah.
So I think that helped. And all those valuable opinions, I think those were given by our appointed agents.
And now that you've done such a good job networking with the various partners, solicitors, advisors on the ground in the UK, have you noticed that the number of new opportunities being presented to you has increased by 10 times, 20 times, 30 times? What's the number based on the pre-Qgrain days where you were lesser known?
Well, definitely. It increased the awareness of Hong Kong CTS in the market. We've been presented every other day almost, not only from the continent of Europe, but around the world. We receive portfolios from the States, from Asia, from Australia. But acquiring Qgrain, that's our very first step of overseas expansion plan. As an SOE, as I mentioned just now, we operate the largest travel network throughout China and Hong Kong. Every year we are sending, last year for UK itself, we organized some 30,000 travelers, Chinese travelers, to the UK. We have 2 solely owned tour operators in the UK. We have also the first joint venture travel agency with TUI in China. So Qgrain, acquiring the Qgrain portfolio, it is our first step, and we are very happy working with them. By using the platform, I think we'll engage more in the acquisitions or takeovers in Europe. But as a start, we are also looking at new opportunities at the other areas of the world, but including the continent of Europe. With the ease of visa policies, definitely there are more Chinese travelers coming into this part of the world.
So is your strategy to go to locations where you see the concentration of Chinese tourists going to, or is it a much more strategic beyond tourism travel numbers type of KPI that you're looking at?
Both, because definitely we can synchronize the jobs between the hotels and the tour operators, travel agencies. It can also become one of our unique competitive advantage to other hotel management companies or investors, whereby we can support our hotels with our own so-called organized tours and guests. But we are not aiming to become, say, one of the largest hotel operators in the world. We don't have that plan to basically expand all over the world. It has to be the right product at the right price.
Sure. Good. I think in the last couple of weeks there's been a lot of discussion about Brexit and how that's going to impact the investment environment in Europe and what have you. As a foreign investor looking into the West and reading the headlines in addition to Brexit and what have you, what is your view on that specific exit or potential exit on the hotel investment side? I'll start off with maybe a question to you on an M&A level, Teddy, and then I'll just work my way down the panel.
I think from China's standpoint, look at major markets like North America, U.S. market. We think the market valuations peaked last year, 2015, and there are going to be an adjustment in terms of the valuation. So we will see, and we are holding Interstate, which is the largest third-party management company in the U.S. But European market, we look at this. I think ECB probably still going to keep the interest rate in the negative territory, and QE is inevitable as a way out. And I don't see, we don't really see any other way. But I think the market, hotel market, probably is bottom up on the upward trending. So, we're very delighted to have the platform like Louvre. As Pierre mentioned, we have a variety of acquisition opportunities. And particularly one unique because the U.S.-Cuban relationship. So Pierre just told me signed one of the first group signed a management contract with Cuba, and I think between China, France, we can establish some unique relationship with Cuban market. I think that's a great tourism destination. So we are still continue looking for strategically overseas investment. It's not just for the sake of investment, but really to build a global platform where you can really provide value-added services to customer. And yesterday I heard the panel talking about the competition, the new innovation, new entries, the OTAs. So scale matters, and I believe that as well. Then one particular phenomenon I would call this is the uprising, emerging middle class of Chinese population. We're looking at easily 300, 400 million people. So I think that impact to the rest of the world in terms of hospitality business is far underestimated by most experts in the west side of the world. So we'll see continue that driven forces change and bring the capital flow and the consumer business to different parts of the world by this emerging China consumption.
So you're confident of the number of Chinese tourists going outbound for the first time or second time to fill out the beds, so your decisions to invest in the UK, whether it's within the EU or not, is relatively indifferent then?
Yeah, I would say, again, we're talking about, the Chinese going out, and the China, yesterday also mentioned the China economy slowed down. But make no mistake, the travel industry in China is still double-digit growth. So every national holiday, you can see people, hundreds of millions of people moving around domestically and global-wise. So that's a phenomenon we really, you can see the change. And from the hotelier standpoint, we see the product adjustment, to more cater this part of the travel business. I noticed this hotel this morning, the breakfast buffet setting, right? There's a Chinese Asian food corner, which I didn't see this, even 3-5 years ago. So that's, that's the things we're seeing.
Okay. How about Sanj?
Yeah, I mean, look at it this way that it's going to be a period of uncertainty for some until the referendum takes place and beyond that. So in many ways, I agree with what Eddie mentioned. There will be plenty of opportunities. I mean, last year the transaction volumes were fairly high. We see some activity going on in the market. The interest rates are probably going to stay where they are for some more time, so which provides some interesting times for the investment. And if the market sort of holds up, the economy itself sort of doesn't go into tailspin, there will be opportunities. And we believe if the currencies are at this level or have a certain amount of weaknesses, that allows investors from our part of the world to look into the opportunities at much more favorably. On the longer term, I think whether it stays or moves out of EU is for the experts to determine what kind of impact it will have. But from the tourism point of view, I think it'll be good. There will be a lot of Asian travelers coming in, whether it's Chinese or Indians or Asians. At a weaker currency, it's always good for the tourism industry. I mean, in our home country, Thailand, when there was a meltdown of financial crisis of 97, 98, it provided a huge amount of impetus to the tourism industry. So I personally feel that it'll not have such a huge impact on the tourism industry, and there'll be opportunities for the investors.
Thank you. Pierre, as the only Frenchman on the panel, what's your view on whether Britain leaves or stays in the EU?
Specifically in France, we have 850 hotels live for the moment in France, and we know very well this market. We open around 25 to 30 hotels every year, and all are very successful because we know very well the market, and because we have a dominant position, we could bring customers to the new hotels. But we are still interested in the German market because it's very close France, and it's quite open for the moment, this market. We acquired this group of 25 hotels in January. We are on the process to buy other small portfolio in Germany, but we are also to develop a new hotel from scratch. We bought a lot of plots in Germany that we are on construction. That I think we want to be on the top 3 in Germany as soon as possible. For the moment, we have only 55 hotels live. It's not enough. We plan to reach a bigger number. But you know also that Louvre Hotel is everywhere in the world. We are present in 51 countries. We are on the top 3 in Brazil, in Africa, and sometimes you could play the cycle. For example, it's good to invest in Brazil now. In Africa, it's a huge development. Then we have plenty of choice for development. Iran, Indonesia, South Korea. Then we could play between the cycles.
Good. And Rock, given your significant acquisition in the UK last year, and the impact that it'll have on payroll if Britain was to exit, do you think that it would be better for you to focus your next acquisition outside of the UK, or are you still confident that a yes or no exit will be indifferent to your midterm views on the European market?
We are still looking at the Europe market, including the UK. France. By acquiring the Q-Grain, it provided with us a platform in the UK. Again, it has to be the right product at the right price at the right time. As an investor, we calculate the return on investment, which I believe everyone's looking at that. I share many comments of what Teddy has just described. And this is also one of the advantages that Hong Kong CTS has. So we can support with some of the incremental business into the hotels that we operate or we acquired. One of the strengths that Q Grand we are happy with is that after the acquisition, Q Grand acquired one of the LRG portfolio 2 years ago. I think after that acquisition, Q Grand, I think in a short period of time, improved a lot of the performance. So from our group, that was our first step of the Q Grand portfolio. Definitely, we are still looking at probably not another size of portfolio as Q Grand in the UK, but maybe a bigger portfolio in Germany or in the continent. We just had our group 5-year plan. We had that meeting last week in Shenzhen. If I may just share one vision, we wanted to be one of the Fortune 500 company in 5 years, in 2020. And we are disposing some non-core business. We used to have an iron and steel business of last year. The annual turnover was about 30 billion RMB. We disposed that. And we are disposing also a power plant. But in the meantime, we are acquiring tourism groups in China and the other part of the world. Just 2 weeks ago, we announced the acquisition of CITS, the second largest tour operator in China. And we are targeting also a few more. So that would enable us a lot more support from the travel sector to the hotels.
Do you plan to bring Metro Park brands, which you have in China, Hong Kong, and Macau, over to the West?
I beg your pardon, sorry?
Do you plan to bring the Metro Park brands over to the West?
In the long run, yes, but not immediately. We are happy in the current form of business. We trust our management companies of Q Grand. We are very happy in working with the franchisees like Intercon, Marriott, Hilton, which Q Grand at the moment managing some of their properties.
Great. That's all the questions I had. I'd like to throw it out to the audience, to anybody who's got any other questions.
Just a question for Teddy. I think recently announced a minority stake in Accor. I'm just curious about the minority stake in Accor and how that may or may not tie into the platform strategy that you're already pursuing with Louvre.
Yeah, well, I know that's going to be a question, but I can't really answer too much about the position Jinjiang is building for Accor, which is a public announcement right now. It's about 11.2%. I think it's the largest shareholder already. But what I can say is the overall strategy to building a global platform where we really can see, given the time in the EU market, and we think there's a lot of things can be done if we work with our EU partners, particularly in China. Accor, these are the public facts. They are in the China market tried many times, and mid product down, they basically, this is across a board to most brands, US brands. I mean, you hear about Hilton giving their Hilton Garden Inn to the local partner, Platino. Actually, we just acquired the Platino, closing the deal actually last week. That's another 4,000 hotels. So the market is there, but international player has a challenge, difficult to really expand their coverage or presence beyond the upscale high-end hotels. So that's one of the things we want to work with international players, taking advantage the China market. That's also a reason we want to establish some aligned interests partnership with companies like Accor.
We've actually just run out of time and the lights have come on, so I'm afraid we won't be able to take any more questions. But I'll be at the CBRE stand this afternoon, and if there's any questions you want me to pass over to the panel, I'd be happy to make introductions or ask the question on your behalf. So I'm sorry there's no more time for other questions, but thank you all for listening in, and thank you to the panelists. Thank you.